Welcome to this Beyond Pain presentation on understanding pain. Over the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to explain how pain works in the body and answer some key questions that often people with chronic persistent pain have. Questions like, why does the weather impact my pain? Why do I get a burning sensation or a stabbing sensation? And how does my mood affect my pain? When we talk about pain, there are two main parts. There's acute pain, and then there's chronic or persistent pain. Acute pain is short-term, it lasts up to 3 months, and when natural healing occurs, the pain stops, a bit like a typical injury. Chronic pain, on the other hand, is long-term. It's past 3 months, and when natural healing occurs, the pain continues, and you might get scans and x-rays, and they all come back normal. The difference between acute and chronic pain is not how bad the pain is. So acute pain can be 8 out of 10. Chronic pain can also be 8 out of 10. But it's more about how long you've had the pain for. So acute pain is up to 3 months, chronic pain is more than 3 months. When we talk about pain, we need to talk about the nervous system. The nervous system is the hardware of pain, and there are two main parts. There's the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, and then there's the peripheral nervous system, which are all these other nerves in the body, these big nerves as well as these little ones. Historically, what we thought was that when you had pain or an injury, the messages about pain would go up the peripheral nervous system to the spinal cord and then the brain, and then you'd feel pain. But we now know it's more complex than that. In order to help explain pain in a more easy to understand way, we at Beyond Pain explained that the nervous system is like a street map. The brain is the CBD, the spinal cord are the inner suburbs, and then your body parts, your arms, your legs, your back, your neck, they're like the outer suburbs. And like on a street map, where you have major highways connecting the outer suburbs to the CBD, and those highways are interlinked by a dense network of back streets or smaller roads. In our nervous system, the body parts are connected to the spinal cord and brain by major nerve highways like the sciatic nerve, and those major nerve highways or pathways are interlinked by a dense network of smaller nerves, a bit like a street map. A lot happens at the level of the spinal cord when it comes to pain, so let's have a look at the spinal cord in a bit more detail. If we take a section of the spinal cord and put it into a diagram, it might look like this, where the blue transparent cylinder is like the spinal cord, and inside it, you have these major nerve pathways going up to the brain. And it could be for pain, movement, temperature, touch, and so on. And those pathways are interlinked by a dense network of smaller nerves, which are not normally used or active, a bit like back streets connecting major roads together. And just like on our roads, where the back streets connect to the major roads and there's often a traffic light system to control the flow of traffic, in our nervous system, especially in the spinal cord, the major nerve highways, where they link with smaller nerves, there's like a traffic light system, and they control the flow of traffic going up to the brain. So let's look at the pain highway in a bit more detail and the things that control these traffic lights. Because if you can identify those factors, we'll be able to influence them and manage our pain better. And there are three main things. Firstly, the number of messages. This means that you need a certain number of messages to come to the traffic lights on the pain highway to trigger them to change from red to green to allow messages to go up to the brain to be processed as pain. And the number of messages required to do that is called a threshold. And the threshold varies from one highway to another. So for example, for pain, you might need 80 or 100 messages, whereas for touch and temperature, you might only need 10 or 20. And that sort of makes sense because typically we don't feel pain all the time. So the threshold is quite high, whereas we can feel light touch and slight temperature changes. So the threshold for those highways are lower. Now, there is a difference between threshold and tolerance. So for a person who doesn't feel pain all the time, their threshold is high, but when they do feel pain, their tolerance is probably low. Whereas for the average person with chronic pain, while their threshold is low, which is why they feel pain all the time, their tolerance to pain is quite high, i.e. they know how to deal with the pain better. The second thing that controls the traffic lights on the pain highway are hormones. Now, when you're happy, excited, feeling confident, your body releases adrenaline and endorphins, which are the feel-good hormones. And what they do is they act on these traffic lights and changes the lights from green to red, or keep them on red and block messages from going up to the brain to be processed as pain. And often people with chronic pain say that when they're happy, excited, or doing things they enjoy, they don't feel their pain as much. Now, the opposite is true when you're sad, depressed, angry, or frustrated, because the body then releases a hormone called cortisol that acts on these traffic lights and changes the lights from red to green to allow messages to go up to the brain to be processed as pain. And likewise, often people with chronic pain say when they are feeling frustrated, angry, sad, or down, they feel more pain. Now, cortisol has other impacts on the body, so feel free to ask one of our team members on how cortisol impacts the other areas of our bodies. Now, the last thing that controls these traffic lights is the brain. The brain can directly ask these traffic lights to stay on green and give more information to be processed as part of the pain experience. And the brain does this because from an evolution point of view, pain is a sign of danger or damage. Now, we know that with most chronic pain conditions, it's not the case. However, the brain doesn't know the difference. And so any type of pain for the brain means a sign of danger or damage. So it wants to know more, keeps the lights on green, and therefore you get more messages going up to the brain to be processed as pain. So let's put all that together and explain how it all works. So imagine you have a simple injury, pain messages comes to the spinal cord, to the pain highway. There's enough messages, so lights go from red to green, and then messages go up to the brain. Up in the brain not only processes those physical messages, but also considers what you may have smelt, seen, heard, felt, your past experiences, your anticipations, your worries and concerns, and puts together what they call a pain experience. So by definition, pain is more than just the physical sensations. It's actually an experience. And this is why no two people can ever feel the same pain. It's very individual to you. And that's also why pain is so complex and difficult to treat. So once the brain processes that, it says it wants to know more because it thinks that there's danger or damage and keeps the lights on green and maintains the state. Now, what happens if you have a really bad injury or a really bad flare-up? Because obviously the pain highway is going to get flooded with information or pain messages. Well, what happens is exactly what you would do if you were stuck in traffic on a highway and you needed to get to the city for an urgent appointment. Most people would find an alternative route and find another highway or a freeway and get to the destination pretty quickly. Similarly with pain messages. If they get congested in the pain highway, they use some of these little nerves which are not normally used to active and jump on another highway and go up to the brain to be processed. And so if they go up the temperature highway, it might be processed as a burning sensation. If it goes up the touch highway, it might be processed as a stabbing sensation. If it goes up the movement highway, it might be processed as spasms. And that all creates into a pain experience, and the brain wants to know more and keeps the state going. Hopefully this slide explains to you why you might be getting different sensations, not just pain. If you're in a lot of pain, what can you do? Well, in order to answer this, think about what you could do if you jam your fingers in a door. Normally, you would blow on your fingers or put ice on it. You might grab at your fingers or rub it really hard, or you might shake your hand vigorously. Why do we do this? We do this because what we're trying to do here is distract the brain from focusing on just pain. By giving information on the other highways and other sensory input, you're essentially taking the attention away from just focusing on the pain. And that's why nowadays we don't prescribe rest for chronic pain conditions. We often say stretches and exercises, moderation of activity and rest, heat, ice, meditation, mindfulness techniques, other psychological techniques. We look at a holistic approach to managing pain, not just rest. So now we've looked at what happens with a basic injury. We've looked at what happens when you have a more serious injury or a flare-up, and we've also spoken about what you need to do. So now let's look at chronic pain. Chronic pain is pain that lasts for more than 3 months. And because it lasts for more than 3 months, certain changes occur in the level of the spinal cord. The brain, what it does is it recalibrates the system so that you feel pain more frequently and constantly because it thinks having pain is now the new normal. The way it does this is by reducing the threshold firstly. So instead of having 80 to 100 messages before the traffic lights get triggered. Now it only needs 10 or 20. So the traffic lights gets triggered a lot faster and stay on for a lot longer, and therefore you get more pain and you feel pain more constantly. The other thing it does is keeps these little nerves open even if this system isn't busy. So what does that mean? Well, it means that if there's a slight temperature change, instead of messages just going up the temperature highway and be processed as a slight temperature change, they might jump across onto the pain highway and be processed as pain. Same with light touch. Instead of just going up the touch highway and be processed as that, some of those messages might jump across and be processed as pain. And so hopefully that gives an explanation as to why the temperature might impact someone's pain or light touch might be painful. And scientists call this process central sensitization. It means the central nervous system is more sensitive to sensory input, including pain, than normal. And so what do we need to do? We need to desensitize it. And the way to do it is through stretches and exercises, relative rest, mindfulness, meditation, other psychological strategies, heat, ice, a range of different strategies that's tailored to you. And when people are able to implement these strategies well, they feel more confident and their function improves and their pain or perception of pain becomes less. That's the end of this presentation. Thank you for listening. If you need more information, please feel free to liaise with our team members who's working with you, or go to www.beyondpain.com.au or email us at info@beyondpain.com.au.